Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 36 of the UK Cowboys Fans podcast. My name is Graham Wilson, and I have returned. I am back. How are we doing,
He's
guys?
on that. He started the 21-day window on Graham coming back.
Yes, nice to see everybody again. For those that don't know, I ended up with COVID 4 weeks ago, and the cough has never quite left me. A bit like Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys, never quite left. So, Jay, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Still trying to work out how we managed to win that game, but it's one of them, innit? It's a win's a win, regardless of ugly.
Well, it is. I mean, if you win, if the Cowboys win each game by a point for the rest of the season, they'll win the Super Bowl. So that's the way I'm looking at it.
Put me teeth in. Funnily enough, we're still going to pick and win Dubai, are we? So we're saying a win's a win, but yeah, we're going to absolutely roast it, no doubt.
Well, this is it. I mean, you can't just go into the season with Cowboys coloured sunglasses on. You know, we're going to take the rough with the smooth, and if they're going to play like that during the regular season instead of the playoffs, then I'm all for that. Lauren, sum up the game on Sunday in one paragraph if you can.
Well, obviously, first drive went brilliantly. First defensive drive as well. We held them to 3 and out, and then it all went downhill from there. Cavonte Turpin muffing a punt, and that just kind of signaled that things weren't going to go our way. I thought, and thankfully we held into the game all the way through, and then we were able to pull it out in the end. So,
DJ Dog, thank you very much for the comment. I'm on the mend. I won't say I'm feeling totally 100% just yet, but I've got my two star wide receivers with me tonight, CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, so they'll hopefully get me through the game.
Can I be Joe Galloway instead?
No, he went out in the first game of the season, if you remember, after we'd given up 2 first-round picks.
So, Jay, was this the first game in a long time where you thought we could lose this?
I don't know if it was that. I thought we were going to absolutely walk in. That's maybe a little bit of disrespect to the Texans, and then also probably a bit of naivety on my part, just for the fact that they were a one-win team. And I'm watching it. I just don't know if the Cowboys kind of had eyes on next week, maybe, and thinking, you know what, we put 50 burger on the Colts the week before. This one's going to be a walk in the park, and I don't know if it was the switching of quarterbacks that threw the Cowboys off, and then as the game kind of unfolded, we seem to revert the type again in terms of we over the last maybe 4 or 5 weeks we've been very well balanced on offense, on run and the passing side of things, and then all of a sudden we just kind of abandoned it all, and it was let's just, not saying that Dak's an awful quarterback, but you don't want that situation where it's like, I think Dak throw for nearly with 40 times. You don't want that. That's not what you need. Keep it going, and Kellen Moore just clearly pretty much shit the bed, didn't he? And he was like, it was like last year, the year before. It was like when things were going bad, he just stopped going, and the run game was brilliant. And that's not to say the passing game wasn't the best, but it was still. It was effective in some ways, but why go away from what was working well? Zeke and Pollard were turning the yard and showing the clock, and that was the best way to keep going. But I think at one point I sat with my head in my hands. I think it was when we tried to punch it in on 4th down and it didn't happen, and I'm thinking this is not going to happen. And then we got away with it.
we did get away with it, I think, in the end. Lauren, is this game all down to number 4?
You certainly, he shows that he is a gamer when the game's on the line. It all becomes him, and the old saying from films like The Replacements that winners want the ball, and he certainly wanted the ball, and he was instrumental in moving that drive. I think at the same time, a lot of the throws that he was making, I mean, he should be able to break through a cover 4 defense that they were playing like that. He shouldn't. He needs to temper this aggression that he has, and he said he needs to be smarter with it as well. That it's one thing being aggressive with the ball and trying to fit them in there, but he's got to be smarter with where he's throwing the ball to, and putting it in a position so that it minimizes the chances of receivers having to tip the ball, inadvertently tipping the ball straight into the hands of a defensive back. But as Jamie says, it beggars belief that we start out with the run, we then go straight to pass. By the end of the first half, it was something like 11 runs and 23 passes. We come out with straight runs, and then we go back to passing again. There wasn't any real continuity, and you were seeing that okay, we scored on the first two. I think we scored on the first 2 drives, but there in and there out, there was no consistency. We were hurt by a lot of things, and then defensively as well. I mean, what's slightly concerning, I'd been on the World's Team podcast with Paul on the Saturday, and I'd sort of said that it'll be a sign that Houston is worried about this game, that they'll open up with lots of trick plays or something like that. Now, admittedly, I was meaning that they'd open up with a flea flicker or a bomb on the first play from scrimmage, but to go with this option QB, and they'd elevated him from the practice squad. He wasn't, and sat their number 2 QB. So we should have seen something like that. That Driscoll is known as being a running quarterback, and we brought this guy. They brought this guy up, and we should have been prepared for that, because certainly we're going to see a heavy dose of the option game in the next couple of weeks. So we should be working on that in practice at the moment. So. It's a little bit scary that Houston had such success against us.
Will we head into the news and updates? Because I think it's one of the busier Tuesdays I've seen in a long, long time.
Yeah, let's go. Just 2 seconds. Gone too far.
I do excuse everybody listening on this show right now. I think I'm gonna burst a few eardrums tonight. I think Mike McCarthy burst a few eardrums on Sunday afternoon. Anyway, gentlemen, where do we start? We have players coming in, we have players coming out. Let's start off with our right tackle. Terence Steele confirmed as done for the year, with certainly an ACL and possibly an MCL as well.
I think it's confirmed that it's both
confirmed for both. It's a tough one. An aspiring player who will hope to have made his fortune by now. Guys, what do we make of this?
You really do. Yeah, you really do feel for him. I mean, obviously, Cowboys front office is already in negotiations with him, and was for the last couple of weeks trying to get a deal done. And I suppose with the benefit of hindsight, Steele probably should have taken that. But you need to see how he recovers from this. The good thing is he should be, touch wood, he should be ready to go come the start of next season training camp. But it will hinder his what he can do for leg strength during the year as well while he rehabs this. So hopefully he can come back stronger next year. But obviously it's going to affect the amount of money that suddenly arrives in his bank account.
I think probably the biggest worry is what do we do now? Do we move Tyler Smith to right tackle, or do we do something else? It's just, and this is no disrespect, but what we saw Josh Doyle, I would rather not have him out there. He did not look comfortable. Didn't look like he could take on the workload. But what do you do? Do you move Tyler Smith out there just to get some reps? I know it's different to left tackle, but it still gets them reps there. You play Peters inside, or do you put Peters outside? What do we do? It's the one thing we didn't need. I mean, the O-line last few years has been sketchy at best with injuries, and it's like now we're pretty much nailed on to get into the playoffs, and now it's like, well, how do we keep his quarterback off his backside?
So to Jamie's question, Laura, what do you do? I'll give you say I'll break out the magic ball and say that Tyron Smith isn't ready for Sunday. There's your definitive answer. How do you line up?
Well, I mean that's going against what Jerry's already said on the radio, that Tyrone is going to be playing on Sunday. I think you've got a week of practice. Jason Peters filled in, once they decided that Josh Ball wasn't going to do anything at right tackle. Jason Peters came in. I thought Jason Peters obviously was instrumental in that last drive as well. So I think that's probably your best bet, is probably play Jason Peters at right tackle. Keep Tyler, if Tyron's not available, keep Tyler Smith at left tackle. I don't think at the moment he's done enough to actually. I think Connor McGovern has earned the chance to play this season. He has developed well this year. I don't think he should be sitting necessarily. And generally, from seeing when Tyler Smith's been in at left guard, he's not stood out head and shoulders above Connor McGovern. So I would keep Connor McGovern at left guard. And then you've got Tyron Smith at left tackle, and maybe even rest Tyler Smith at the moment, because you're also got to consider that you're probably hitting the rookie wall now, that he's played 10 straight games, 11 straight games, whatever. And this is normally the area in college football where you've got 3-4 weeks off before you start the bowl games. So there is an adjustment period there that's required for rookies.
See, this is what really frustrates me as well, in terms of how owners, GMs, kind of pretty much stick their oar in. Like, we all know Jerry signs the checks and this and Jerry makes all this stuff, and he's come out and he's gone. Tyler Smith is ready. He's going to play. That decision should not come from Jerry. That decision should come from Mike McCarthy and the coaching staff. At the end of the day, he selects, and yeah, an NFL kind of starting 11, however you want to play it, both sides of the ball, pretty much picks itself. But when it comes to a player like Tyler Smith coming back from injury, that should come from Mike McCarthy and sitting down with his coaches and saying, right, what's the best way to use him to maximise what we can get out of him, but to minimise the risk of picking up any injuries. That shouldn't come from Jerry, because pretty much Jerry's come out and gone, yeah, he's going to play, which pretty much means Mike McCarthy's hands are now tied. That's not how it should be. It should come from the coaches. GMs do what GMs do and pick players, sign players, blah blah blah. You don't pick the starting left tackle for a game. It's down to the coaches.
That's exactly why I raised the scenario that Tyrone won't play on Sunday, because I think it's a little bit convenient that your Pro Bowl left tackle is ready to play as soon as your starting right tackle goes out of the game. If Tyron Smith was 100% ready to play, why didn't he have pads on Sunday?
Yeah.
And
this is why the Cowboys haven't been back to a Super Bowl in, what is it, 25 years, off the top of my head. Because, and no disrespect to him, great brand builder on all that kind of stuff off the field. But when leave the football side to football people, and you know what I mean? And if he keeps getting involved, then we're going to be mediocre for God knows how, and we're going to waste people like Dak and Zeke and Trayvon Diggs and you know what I mean, just to name a few. And it's just like, and I think that's why when you, and I know he's kind of going on a bit of a tangent here. He's like, people like Jason Garrett, yes men, no, you know what I mean? Like, would someone like a Sean Payton stand for like the left tackle fit? He's going to play. I don't think he would. Or Bill Belichick wouldn't let Robert Kraft jump in and tell him when he has to bring his left tackle back.
Yeah,
I'm going to shut up now anyway.
I don't see why. Like, you make a perfectly valid point, Jay. I don't see why they had to come out on Sunday night, Monday morning, whenever it was, and say Tyron Smith's ready to play. The game is on Sunday. You know, if it, like you say, it puts more pressure on Smith to get the pads on. If they had said that on Friday morning at the presser, nobody would have pressed the panic button on Wednesday or Thursday. You know, let the week play out. Why do you have to jump straight in? It's not as if the Cowboys have a 500 record right now and are struggling for us offensive starters. Just let it play out. See what happens. I mean, it's not as if we're absolutely desperate for offensive line talent. I mean, goodness, I didn't believe I'd be saying that. For instance, at this point during the season, there was a stat that came out on Friday or Saturday that the Cowboys were first in sacks and first in sacks allowed, which is incredible to me. I never saw that coming in a month of Sundays. Anyway, that's a different point. I just don't see why Jerry felt like it felt like he was firefighting. Do you know what I mean? Like the offensive line world was crashing down, and don't worry, everybody, calm. Tyron Smith's going to play on Sunday. Jerry, you didn't have to. You didn't have to say that. Just it felt like added pressure. It felt like added pressure.
Would it don't happen, but it'd be a Cowboy thing, wouldn't it? Jerry said on Sunday that Tyron Smith is going to play this week, and he goes and gets him bent over backwards in practice, and then ends up not playing. Would it don't happen like, but you know, it's typical Cowboys, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's move on to slightly more upbeat news. The Cowboys have signed former Indianapolis Colt T.Y. Hilton. First of all, to Lauren, what do you make of Hilton's current traits? Can he be a number 2 receiver? Is he a number 3 receiver? Is he a red zone? And Jay, you can have a think about this one. Does this end the Odell Beckham Jr. talk, or do you put any stock in the OBJ for the playoffs? Lauren, let's go with you first.
Right. I think certainly, T.Y. Hilton is a guy that, has produced numerous 1,000-yard seasons, averages at least 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns a year. I think he's 10th year in the league, and he's had at least 3 touchdowns every year. But he's most recently he's been suffering with a lot of soft tissue injuries. So there's questions about his dependability, availability, all that sort of thing. Mike McCarthy said in his press conference that he had a tryout with the Cowboys a few weeks back. We obviously didn't make a move then, but we've decided to make a move now. Again, it's probably on the back of the fact that OBJ has left town at the moment without a deal. T.Y. Hilton's certainly going to bring in a veteran presence again to this wide receiver room. And it'll just give somebody again who's capable of taking the top of this defense as well. Half the reason why these passes are getting intercepted is we're not getting anybody that's streaking down the field doing the long ball and causing concern for safeties or deep back. That's something we need to do, which then opens up the zones across the middle.
And Jay, can we say goodbye to Beckham Jr. for now?
Well, if you read the reports, maybe not. But I know we've gone back and forth on not just Tuesdays but on Thursday shows about the signing. And I'm kind of, I were all for it. Then I want, and then reading potentially what some of the comments were he made the other day, and I'm like, I don't want anybody like that near our locker room. I think the reports of that he's not picked somebody that he's gonna kind of hold off anyway because he doesn't see the point of playing in the regular season. Well, no, don't. If you want to play in the playoffs for the Cowboys, you come and you scratch your backside off, like what T.Y. Hilton's doing now. He's coming in. He's good. He's a dependable pass catcher who can take the pressure off CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, and not overwork those two. And he's going to have a role leading into the playoffs, and then hopefully deep into the playoffs. Why do we want someone to say, "Well, no, I'll come to you, but I'll come to you in playoffs"? Nah, I would personally stay clear. I think the Cowboys will keep an eye on it, but now Hilton's there. Is there a real need for him because we've got as number one, Gallup's as number two, and like you say, Hilton, depending on the role he gets, potentially he's going to be number three, but has that potential to be a number two. So I think we've got a good core three there, and then we've obviously got players like Noah Brown that we can rely on to pick up the slack at the other end. So I don't see the point.
So yeah, they've just elevated Washington back to the full roster. Are you a little surprised they didn't go after cornerback help instead?
Well, again, it's who's on the market at the moment. Now, we did bring a cornerback in last week. We brought a cornerback in onto the practice squad back when Jordan Lewis went down as well. So we've got both of those guys that we can do this ramp up as Mike McCarthy talks about. We can get them ready. But at the same time, you're certainly getting to see a healthy dose of Nashawn Wright, Kelvin Joseph, which, and again, in the Houston game, that was probably a game that you were quite happy to. You certainly wouldn't want to be throwing them out there, against Jalen Hurts or something like that. And even the limited number of plays they got last week, they're going up against a quarterback this week who has the potential to throw dimes as well. So Lawrence has certainly shown that he can. He's hot and cold at the moment, but he's certainly shown that he belongs in this league. So we need to have these DBs ready. But as I say, you do have the veteran presence on the practice squad that you can elevate at any point in time. T.Y. Hilton obviously was out there, and has been looked at as an option. So I think it's anything that you can do to at least improve the wide receiver room again, and I think, even just the threat of OBJ in the last couple of weeks since we've been talking about it, the wide receiver core have elevated their game, and we are seeing Gallup and CD Lamb develop into the sort of 1A, 1B receivers that we were expecting them to be. Noah Brown's showing up as well at times. Washington, only got targeted once in this game, but was also playing special teams because of the fact that Kelvin Joseph was starting at corner as well. So he'd sort of been drafted into special teams to take on Kelvin Joseph's sort of role. So I think again, leave it this week, see what Washington does as well. And by the end of the season, again, you can have various packages for various wide receivers. So
I'll just throw this out there that Richard Sherman's currently a free agent. Anyway, so we'll add on to the woes of the news that Jonathan Hankins is done until the playoffs, which is a bit of a sore one when you consider how run light we are, shall we say. And Mike McCarthy's quoted it's too early to say if Jake Ferguson will feature in week 15. He suffered a head neck injury, they're calling it, against the Texans. Any concerns over those two?
It's a shame about Hankins. We brought him in, and certainly we did see that the run defense had stiffened up a little bit. Can Dan Quinn still scheme around the fact that you don't have that big body there? And obviously we did get rid of Tristan Hill, and Tristan Hill was a similar sort of size body, but Bahana's been on the injury report the last couple of weeks with various illnesses and knee problems. Can he come back to full strength as well? Just lots of question marks about that, to be honest.
Jay, what do you think? Anything?
Yeah, like I said, and I think they're both as a kick in the guts as each other. Like you say, Hankins that was brought in to shore up that run defense. It was looking good. Like I said, now we're down one body in that area. But Jay Ferguson's been going on leaps and bounds week after week. It weakens both sides, and it's as much as you don't want injuries. Would you rather have them now when we're pretty much close to clinching the playoffs? I think depending on results, we can clinch the playoffs this week, can't we? Or at least the playoff berth anyway, depends on where we are. So we can get them fit and healthy for a decent playoff run, and we can get some other guys in to get some much needed game time. So it's not nice, especially you don't want it. Especially, like I say, probably a bit more gutting from a personal aspect for Hankins, just for the fact he's come over, he's a massive role, and that's obviously gone tits up for a couple of weeks.
Right, okay. I think we've had enough negative news. Let's get on to the offense, shall we, Lon?
Yep, let's go for it. 2 seconds.
So, the offense. Where to begin? Couple of flashpoints for you. Dak threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard did run for an average of 4 yards per carry, both of them, which is nice to see. No receiver touchdown on Sunday, and too many interceptions for my liking. I'll leave it to you guys to pick up the bones of that. What are your initial thoughts?
Again, it all comes down to the play calling, I think. I mean, obviously, we proved we've got a healthy run game. You know, Dak even ran for 3.8 yards a carry, 9 carries, 20 odd yards or whatever. Wait a minute, what were the stats? 6 carries, 23 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. You're getting production out of the running game. Dak is distributing the ball to numerous receivers as well. Again, it's, he's still making these little mistakes. You can sort of let him off in some respects. In the second one, his arm got hit as he was throwing it. The first one, though, that got tipped as well. But he's got to throw the ball better on that sort of pass. But just things weren't working across the board. I don't think, there was no, as I say, there was no continuity for the offense after the first couple of drives. We were constantly stalling out at various points, and thank God we've got Brett Maher of 2022 and not Brett Maher of 2018, 2019, because could you imagine if Brett Maher was shanking his kicks left, right, and centre? That game would have just been an embarrassment. We wouldn't have been in that game. So,
Jay, what was the big concern offensively for you on Sunday?
In all honesty, Dak. I know that might shock.
Yeah,
he was awful on Sunday. He was, and they summed it up well on I can't remember which Cowboys podcast it was. He was very Brett Favre, like he was erratic. His throws were awful. A lot of throws behind receivers. It was very un-Dak-like, and now a lot of that probably that's shoulders to blame on Kellen Moore. I don't know if we just relied too heavily on Dak because they were panicking because the game felt like it was getting out of control. But yeah, that for me, that's where it went. The run game was fantastic. Why not keep leaning on that? Like you said, first, second down, set up a short field for Dak. And not saying Dak can't throw deep balls and stuff because he can. It was just, it was just one of them off. It was just one of them off days, and again, he had a leading on too much. I think because he's on pushing $40 million a year. We're going down long route of getting beat by the worst team currently in the NFL. Let's relax. I put heavily on Dak's shoulders, and that's not what the Cowboys have been over the last few weeks. The Cowboys have had a nice spread of passing and a running game. Keep it going. The team struggles. Don't look at the Colts. Colts have, to be fair, not a bad defense, the Colts, and we absolutely torched them to pieces. And 60-40, I'm going to go just Dak, just for the fact that he Kellen Moore shoulders a lot of this and all. I think I've championed it for the past, and if he's back next year, I'm going to be fuming like a lot of people. I think it's time to move on. On offensive coordinator, anyway, it's time to move on.
I think one of the things that was interesting is obviously because of the CBA, you've only got a limited number of padded practices that you're allowed to have. Last week, Mike McCarthy decided that, every single practice last week was just going to effectively be a walk through, in just lids and shorts and what have you. And I think that coupled as I think it's Joe had actually said that, because of all the sideshow with OBJ as well, I think, perhaps the Cowboys were taking this week, and it's Vegas's fault that, going into this game being 17-point heavy favourites as well. I mean, probably has some of these guys sort of taking their eye off, being a bit looser in practice, that sort of thing. Reckoning this will be a cakewalk. And realistically, in the NFL, I mean, even the worst team. I mean, if you go back to 1989 when we were 1-15, we shouldn't have beaten the Redskins that year. Because literally we were playing with scraps and next to nothing. Aikman was injured half the time. Steve Walsh was in even. We traded away Herschel Walker, all that sort of stuff, and we still managed to scrape up at least one victory away. There's very few years that you have a team going 0-16. The Detroit Lions are certainly lay claim to that title, but being the 17-point underdog, was probably good notice board material for Houston, and Houston were probably more ready to play than we were.
I think as well, even though they say that they're so poor, that they're so well, they are at the minute. I think a lot of people have also forgot it were even though they're not in the NFC East, essentially a rival game. It was kind of the Battle of Texas, wasn't it? And everyone always goes, yeah, there's only really one team in Texas. But when you say then you say that, and it's like, well, are we the quiet sister? So we're going to show you. And yeah, if they're going to win one more game this year, then why would they not want it to be this one so they can have the bragging rights till the next time we've got a game in Texas?
Yep.
So we have our criticisms for number 4 in this game, but we're going to talk about the last touchdown now. Now we need to be careful here, because when you involve giving to charity in touchdowns, you end up with fines. So we're going to have to be very, very careful when talking about the Salvation Army bucket, just in case you get fined for mentioning that. So we'll be very, very careful here. You all know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into that. I think it's absolutely pathetic, but hey ho. They did score an almost perfect touchdown to win the game from our own 2-yard line. The ball hit the ground once. Does that show the difference between a win and a loss, and they still have that ability? We just found it a bit tough during the game. Does that lighten the load a little bit?
I think it.
Go ahead, Jay.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think it in some ways shows us what we need to see about the Cowboys, and if they've got a bit of grit and determination when they're back against the wall, if they can get out of it. And I think we did. Yeah, it wasn't pretty, and it's nice getting 50 points every week, but every now and again you've got to have one of these games where it's like you've got kind of brought back down to earth and see what you're mentally made of. And I think, although it's not pretty on the scoreboard, it wasn't definitely didn't look pretty from in the stadium, watching it on telly. But it might keep a bit grounded and think, actually, we might not be as good as we think we are, and it'll make them maybe take the Jags a little bit more with a bit more respect and potentially what it at least looked like.
As soon as the ball got down to the 2-yard line, I actually had a funny feeling that we were going to come back and win this, because on Monday Night Football last week, the Buccaneers had a 98-yard drive to win the game on the last series. Baker Mayfield, after only 48 hours, had a 98-yard drive to beat the Raiders on Thursday night. And I just thought, as soon as the ball landed at the 2 and was down to the 2, I'm going, right, 98 yards. I bet you this, as they say, things come in threes. And sure enough, we started moving the ball, and I'm thinking, right, this is great. And then, obviously Gibbs catch and, been driven to the turf, and unfortunately, it dislodged the ball. I was a little bit concerned there, but then, at the end of it, our offensive line did what they needed to do, opened the hole for Zeke, and Zeke powered in. You wish they'd blocked the play as well that well when Zeke got stopped on 4th down earlier in the game. But again, it shows what we can do when we're switched on. We just need to be switched on. It's almost like our guys almost suffer from ADHD. That they're constantly, they can control themselves for small periods of time, but they can't play as yet. We haven't seen them play the perfect game, and it's just once that happens, this team will be rocking. And I think as well, again, this is something Paul and I were discussing, is that do we play down to this team, or look at when we go out and play teams like Minnesota, and Minnesota we go and absolutely hammer them because we were ready for them. You go out and play Green Bay who are on a slide at the moment, and you get up 14 points and you fritter it away in the 4th quarter as well. We play down to, or we play to the level of the team that we're going up against, and unfortunately, that involves us playing down half the time, because we are in a vaulted position at the moment that we're a couple of games out from the playoffs. We've got I think it's the 2nd best record we've got in the NFC at the moment. But all they should do is have a look at the scoreboard and see that the Giants absolutely crumbled against the Eagles. And if we've got any hope of surpassing the Eagles and going into the number 1 seed, we need to have the Eagles falter not only on Christmas Eve, but we need to have them falter a couple of times more, or one more time at least. And you should be looking up and saying, right, well, they're winning. We need to absolutely hammer these guys as well.
And I know we're kind of knocking how we play, because it went prayer. And gee, if I'm jumping ahead here, but I think the UK fan base needs to take a bit of credit. I think, because if anybody didn't see across the socials, Paul's out there at the minute. Mike Bull was at the game, and Darren as well. And it's a good omen when UK fans are in town, especially 2022, because the Cowboys are undefeated at AT&T Stadium when the UK Massive are in town. So I think everyone needs to chip in and get some pennies, and we need to get to every game at AT&T for the rest of the season.
Yep. But the other thing that I was reminded of was, obviously, the last time we played the Texans was 2018. Paul was there. It was at NRG Stadium in Houston, and unfortunately, that was a game that we didn't come out on the right side of. That was the year that we were up and down with Garrett. I think that was, funnily enough, I think that was the year before in the run up to us actually picking up Amari Cooper mid-season. And we're obviously this season we started talking about what we were going to do, how we were going to cope without Amari. So I think interesting bookend there.
So here's a scenario that I thought of for the both of you. Towards the end of the game, you'll remember it well. The Texans are on our goal line, and they go for it, 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 and they end up stuffed on our goal line. That's why we ended up on the 2-yard line effectively. If the Texans had kicked the field goal, they would have the ball back with 46 seconds to go and kick another field goal. Did Lovie Smith drop the ball on that one, or would you guys have gone for the 6 points? Because if I was Lovie Smith, I would have kicked the field goal and make the Cowboys go the length of the field, and you would still have the opportunity to win the game. Now, bear in mind, you've only got 46 seconds, but your average NFL kicker is making 55-yard field goals nowadays. Did the Texans shoot themselves in the foot a little bit?
Now, it's hard to talk about this one because I think Lovie Smith achieved two things on Saturday. On Sunday. Obviously, he showed that he can get a team that's fairly devoid of talent. He can still make them competitive, almost snatch the improbable victory. But at the same time, he just allowed Houston to lose that game, and obviously they're still in first place for the number one pick this year. He's again, he's shown that he can get this team competitive, get them in the games and all this sort of stuff. Maybe shores up his job for next season. Give them the benefit of the doubt because they were floundering last season. If they can be better show signs of improvement this year, and not necessarily in the scoreline, but just being competitive in games. And then Lovey keeps his job, but he gets this plethora of high draft picks in each round. Obviously, I think they've got a number of other pick. They've still got multiple picks from other trades in the first 4 rounds or so. He's got quite a nice stockpile of capital there. Get some players in that he wants, and get this team back on track. Had they won this game, then it throws it open that other teams can sort of drop down, and the way you're seeing Denver playing at the moment, Denver are Seattle are rubbing their hands at the moment that they've screwed Denver out of all these picks. It's almost a bit like draft day 2. So.
So Gio kicked the field goal.
I'm not surprised they went for it. I'm just surprised the personnel they had on the field. That running back was a nightmare at times for the Cowboys. Why not? If you notice, they took him out of the game.
Yeah, I think he had to come out. It was Rex Burkhead that was the running back at the time. I think that was forced upon them.
Pierce.
Back to what Lal said, is it because they had a chance of moving out of the number one pick? You know what I mean? They're gonna have a choice of quarterbacks, and it's a decent quarterback class that's coming out this year. Do you give up that for a win just because of a win that's not going to really get you anything in terms of your team? Not surprised, like I say, they went for it. I just think the personnel. I just was very surprised.
But remember, if the Texans punch it in there, the game's over. So
that's what I mean. I was surprised that they didn't
give it a good goal.
They didn't go the way they did, because I think if the running back would have been on the field, I think they'd have punched that in, and we wouldn't have got out of that game. I think it's a bit of like you say, it was a bit of let's show that this team's got a bit about it, and it needs a couple of decent additions for future years. Especially with
your audio's cutting out, Jay. You want to make it a wee bit louder?
Can you hear me now? Sorry, I thought it was a little bit of this is a decent draft class for quarterbacks anyway. It's like, well, we either get a choice of all of them that are there, or you can still move back a couple of places and still get a decent one. So it's like, 6.5 doesn't open it, but yeah, I'm not surprised I went for it, but I'm just more surprised of who kind of got the workload on it.
Okay, so we'll try and lift the conversation a little bit more, because we need to remember that we won the game. we did win the game. Let's try and pick up a few positives from the Cowboys offense on Sunday, because it was another win, second season of 10 wins in a row. What were our big talking points? What were the things we can at least take out of the 27 points that we scored?
I think that the run game definitely was a huge boost. And then, you know what, I mentioned elaborated on a little bit earlier that even when it's back against the wall, we took out a win. And it gets to this time of the year, and everyone knows what the playoffs are generally like. You've got to tough it out in the playoffs, and I think we've seen that we could be all right in the playoffs. We know how to tough it out, and yeah, let's just hope it doesn't come around too often to have to play like that, but we know we can do it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, football is very much a game of, you go in with a plan, and the plan works until you get hit in the mouth. That old saying. We took our punches, we came out, and we still managed to win this game. That's the main thing that you've got to say. And again, if we'd been rolling and everything like that, the guys again would maybe be looser next week going into this game. This should provide another spur for them to actually knuckle down and prepare for the last quarter of this season as well, and just try and achieve what they want to achieve. Make sure they get into the playoffs. Try and get the highest seeding that they can. That will allow you a chance to get some of these guys like Hankins. Try and get him back. Try and get other guys that are on IR at the moment that are short-term IR. Get them back and get to as close to being relatively healthy as well. And we did that, and we're still in this race for the NFC East. We haven't hindered our chances. But it just should provide a teaching point for this week for training.
Okay. Let's move on to defense, because I think we're going to need a little bit more allotted time for defense this week, unfortunately.
Yep.
Right. Where do we start here? Now, do we start off with injuries at cornerback? Do we start off with a down game from Micah Parsons? Or do we start off with giving up 23 points to two bit part quarterbacks? Where do you guys want to start with this one?
Well, the first thing you'd have to say is that the offense obviously put our defense in the hole on two of those touchdown drives. Obviously, with the muffed punt by Kevontae Turpin, and then on the the second to last drive as well, where Dak had thrown his second interception, and that was at the 10-yard line. Now, it was a great play by, I think it was Dalton Schultz to come back and at least tackle him, because 10 yards out, it's somebody making an interception. The good bet is he wanders in for the go ahead touchdown. So it was a good play, but again, we need to move on to the defense. But that was a good play by Schultz to stop them there. But again, short field doesn't really give the defense a chance to put the shackles on immediately. They especially if they've been on the sideline for a bit, they need couple of minutes, or at least a couple of plays to truly get firing on all cylinders each drive. And I think having that short field, take away those two short fields, and I think the Houston Texans were they would have been held a lot lower. They wouldn't have got the points that they did. And we did manage to stop them and managed to force them to kick field goals a number of times as well. So that's certainly a positive as well. But it was interesting the way that they played. They certainly schemed things to limit the success of our defense. I mean, this is the first time since the Giants game last year that the Cowboys defense has been held without a sack.
Jay, what do you think? What was your biggest concern?
I'm going to go with injuries. I just think, and Long kind of touched on it a little bit there at the end. I don't think that as bad as the Texans are, I don't think we're giving their offense probably as much credit as deserved. Like you say, when was the last time the Cowboys were held to no sacks? Parsons, yeah, he had a quiet game, but look who we lined up against. As bad as that team has been as a whole, Tunsil's was still one of the best offensive tackles in the league. He's going to get games as dominant as Parsons is. He's going to come up sometimes. It happened to the best of them. It happened to DeMarcus Ware plenty of times. It happened to D-Law. It happened to some of the best defensive players to ever play this game. You're not going to get that level of play from every single time. And I just think, I think it's more that they played well. If you look at it, I know it's probably jumping a little ahead, but we saw some outstanding players on defense. For me, I bash him a lot every week. I think we probably see Van Der Esch's probably best game in the Cowboys jersey. Odigizua was fantastic again. For me, is he probably the best player on the Cowboys defense this year? Like I say, just some guys. I mean, like some of the plays, yeah. And I just think we were just caught up a little bit off guard with how often they switched quarterbacks, and I think that just upset our timings, and and our game plan on defense. I don't think it was more that the defense was bad. I think it was just one of them games where it was the injuries are. Yeah.
Okay, so let's try and go through it methodically. Let's start on defense. Now, I brought up a stat earlier in the show that the Cowboys have the most sacks or had the most sacks in the league. I don't know if that's still the case. Depending on who you visit, the NFL website says there were no registered sacks. The ESPN says there was one registered sack. Is that concerning against quarterbacks that are not necessarily starters, where the Texans ready for a kind of game plan, and can that game plan be used against us again? Is I suppose the main question.
I think it can, and I mean we're going to see this run pass option that Houston employed so well. I mean this is effectively what we had against Philadelphia as well, and to some extent we had it in the Chicago game as well. So this is, and what this does is it takes out Micah Parsons, because Micah Parsons' first responsibility is, he should go for the ball carrier, but is the ball carrier the quarterback? Is it the running back? Is he about to throw? And that split second takes off the speed of Micah Parsons, takes off the aggressiveness of the defensive line, and it just hinders everything. Now you saw when on that last drive where Houston were trying to get back to get the go-ahead score after reading on 27-23 up, Laramie Tunsil jumped offside twice, and that was because he was knowing that they were going to have to pass the ball, and because of that, our defensive linemen they knew that they could just pin their ears back. And Laramie Tunsil was obviously worried about the speed of Micah Parsons. And Micah Parsons could, if those plays had carried on, Micah Parsons could quite easily, or whoever was over that side, could quite easily have, taken advantage of that. And we could be talking about there being sacks. But this run pass option is exceptionally difficult to defend. And especially the way our defense is playing against it, we need to sit. Dan Quinn should be using every spare minute at the moment to try and focus on how he's going to stop this, because obviously we've got Philadelphia coming up in the next 11 days or so. So it is concerning there.
Yeah, Jay, I know exactly what game tape Jalen Hurts is going to be watching anyway.
Yeah. I think when they say when teams that are so poor kind of find a way to break you down, teams are going to look at trying to copy that. And I'm not just saying this with the Eagles, but are they really that good? You look at their schedule through them, are they really playing with the Eagles? A little bit that is to do with being a Cowboys fan, but also
Jay, can we turn your sound up a wee bit?
I wonder if it's because I've leaned back a bit. But as well, if you look at their schedule they've played, aside from us, they've only really played the Vikings. I think we'll beat them on Christmas Eve. I think we'll start to see them slipping down. I know that's jumping ahead to Christmas, but gotta get some Eagles bashing in somewhere, don't
we? Yeah. So let's move further back in the formation a little bit. In terms of draft capital, they have spent what I would expect them to spend on the cornerback position. I will be a little bit honest and concerned that I'm not sure on our current selection. Brown and Lewis have exposed one or two holes that I do not like. Bossman Fat, let's talk about number one. What do we think?
It doesn't look good for him at the moment. And I mean, obviously, Jerry's comments on Friday about, him needing to step up and, assume the role, the time for all of his sideshow shenanigans and what have you needs to be put to one side, and he needs to focus on football. I think that was a dig at him because obviously he was off on Wednesday's. He was on Wednesday's practice report, has been off with an illness. Now he was back on Thursday, but after being off for a couple of weeks with or limited and what have you from illness the last couple of weeks as well, you should really. I know, Jay, you're 4 weeks into your illness and you're still coughing your lungs up, but Joseph was clear the week before, but back on the illness report this. Was it really an illness, or was he, did he had a few beers the night before and woken up with a sore head or something like that and just didn't report in or whatever?
I also don't have access to some of the best doctors in the world 24 hours a day. So there's that to take into consideration as well. Jay, this guy's not a rookie. And there was one particular arm tackle on Sunday that I did not like the look of.
Yeah, and I can just kind of touch you back on a little bit what Law said there. It just shows how much of a crazy world the NFL is in it. Because if that would have been a teammate that said something like that, what Jerry said, they'd be thrown under the bus for it. Like, and when what was it? The quarterback for the Jets, when he kind of didn't come to it, or kind of didn't say that they helped the defense, they didn't help the defense. Like, I think, yeah. So it's weird how somebody can get away with one comment, but somebody can't. But going back to that, yeah, I think he's not a rookie. We're seeing a little bit of things like I think Jordan Lewis a couple of years ago was doing crazy stuff like this on the field, and it's like when is enough enough? I get that there's been high draft picks on some of these players, but there's got to be a time where you say, you know what, you've had your chance, and I think it's probably more to do with that this secondary, apart from Diggs, has been pretty gash for the last few years. They can hit it right in the upcoming drafts. I think we'll start seeing players like this not being on the roster, but they're getting they're getting a very long leash because there's nobody really good enough to take over them at the minute.
So, Lauren,
the only thing I would go on.
My question there was a segue into this question. Our second corner, other starting corner opposite Diggs, is a rookie, and he's a 5th round pick, and he's starting. Concerns over Wright and Joseph playing second fiddle to a 5th round rookie?
Well, I think there is a difference. I mean, Bland is your nickel corner. He's your Jordan Lewis type guy, and he's handling the inside. So you do need to be a bit more agile than being on the outside. All you've got to do effectively on the outside is jam the receivers at line, use the sideline as an extra defender. The nickel corner obviously has to be more of an all-rounder, able to follow players all across the field. So Bland is a different type of cornerback. I think if you saw Bland on the outside, I think he would struggle on the outside. My question is whether the lack of opportunities for both Kelvin Joseph and Nashawn Wright are limiting their progression. Now, we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years that guys like Dorrance Armstrong, who, again, was only a second stringer coming on for play here, play there, as spelling guys. Now that he's getting more and more reps, he's coming in and doing damage. And he's really developed into what is it? He's got 8 sacks on the season. By all means, could be double digits by the end of the season. If again he finished up the game with a sprained ankle, I think, and was in a walking boot. So hopefully he's not out for too much longer. But certainly, can these guys develop by being on the field and get more and more game time? And do you just take the lumps while they grow with this? That's the sort of question that we'll find out in the next couple of weeks.
No, and I know, I think sometimes a lot of emphasis is put on what round players are picked in, and we've seen it, especially on the Cowboys roster over the years, players taking their opportunity when it's given to them, and lands a 5th round pick, but he's taking. If anything, he's getting less opportunity than the others because of where he got picked, and the opportunities he's getting, he's grasping with 2 hands. Now, when you look, and this is not a knock on some of the players on defense that have made massive strides this year and played well, but would you not love to have 11 types of Deron Bland who were going on there and making play after play after play, rather than going, well, you know what, we picked this guy in the second round, we picked this guy in the third round, so we need to give him a chance. No, chuck the fifth guy. If the fifth round guy, the sixth round guy is making plays, get him in. He's gonna have more of an effect on the game than someone that. Now, is it because these guys are like, I'm a second round pick, I'm a third round pick, so I'm gonna have a longer leash than everybody else, and they just kind of. You see it a lot as well sometimes with, like, for instance, Hitchens. I'm using just in terms of the contracts. Like you say, you don't really see much of them until contract year. Then contract year comes and it's like, right, now I need to play. So it's like, no, I want guys interested in the length of the contract.
So I'm conscious that I'm bringing the tone down again. So let's try and bring it back up a little bit. It was pretty horrible to see number 7 Trevon Diggs run off to the locker room. I think we were all a little bit terrified at that point, but he did come back in, and he did go to the races to get us the interception. Was Diggs one of the bright lights in a pretty shadowed cornerback room at the minute?
Yeah, I think so, and we're obviously lucky that it's only he's got a bruised hand or what have you, and obviously it had swollen up on Sunday. That fumble recovery that he did as well. I mean that, and then the subsequent run around the field. I mean, he must have covered about 100 yards on that play. That was crazy. And in some respects, you almost wish that, I think it was Hooker that was on, had a chance at picking up the fumble as well. And if Hooker had picked it up, he was already past the would-be tackler as well. And I mean, he would have sauntered in for a touchdown there, and that would have probably snapped the Texans back a little bit more than what they actually did, especially as we didn't get anything off that drive. But
I completely forgot it was a fumble. I'm just that used to number 7 in the interception. But Jay, at what point were you screaming at the TV, just get down, just get down, just take the turnover. We don't need the hero. We've got the ball.
I've not really even thought about it until you mentioned it, because I think it's one of them things in it, because you always want to see the Cowboys score points, and it's like, right, the defense have got to turn. The defense has got to just run, just go, and it's like, yeah. So you get in the moment, don't you? But then, like, kind of looking back at it, you just think, yeah, just get down and just secure it, and let's just get on with the next one. And it's like, no, because it's just we always say that, it's one of the Cowboys things, you know. You could probably say it being like a bit of a Madden curse, wouldn't it? We'd get it. You try to run it in for a touchdown. Someone would pop it out. He'd trip up, he'd flick up in air. They'd take it back in for 6 or 7. And it's just like, yeah.
Well, that's just the point I was going to bring up. It was a 17-yard game. You would have expected more for the length of time. But like you're saying, an offensive player with a bit of mindset to punch that ball out, and before you know it, it's back up in the air and everybody's scrambling about on top of it. But he did get
It's almost the sort of defensive version of the Tony Romo play against the Rams. You know, that first or second season where the ball sailed over his head. He ran back, cut back and weaved and what have you, and eventually got a first down, managed to scramble for a first down. It was that sort of thing. And you're thinking, especially when he started going towards the sideline and you saw, I think it was an offensive lineman was tracking him down, and you just thought, oh God, protect, don't carry the ball with one hand, protect the ball and what have you. But he did the right thing and actually went out of bounds because he was tiring on the play. If he hadn't done that, then yeah, it probably would have been, knocked out, and you'd be looking at it, we'd be going, oh Christ, that was a missed opportunity.
So, moving on to another bright spark in a fairly mediocre defensive performance, shall we say, is there any opportunity for Mukwamo to play more at corner, or is he set at safety? What do we think? Because another good performance from Mukwamo. Just we questioned the particular selections at cornerback. Is Mukwamo set at safety?
I think he's creating a wee niche. He is sort of a serviceable backup to the three sort of starting safeties that we have in Curse, Hooker, and Donovan Molson, and he's able to step in, and he's maybe a step down from all three, but he's able to actually assume the role that all three of these guys do. The more that you put on his plate, you got to remember he was a 7th round draft pick as well. He was one of our last draft picks last year. So the more that you're piling on his plate, you're maybe taking away against the instinctiveness of what he's doing. And I mean, you saw that we obviously tried that with Robinson a couple of years ago, where we started him out at safety, moved him back to cornerback after deciding the safety side of things wasn't working, and then we obviously released him this year. But I think certainly worth giving him a shot if you really think that Nashawn Wright and Kelvin Joseph aren't going to work out, then give him a shot, because he was the one that came on the phone and told Jerry that he was going to be the best cornerback that we had on the roster as well.
He did say corner. He did say
then,
corner. Yeah, Jerry talk about getting the best guys on the field all the time. Is Mukwamo in for a shout at corner?
At the minute, yeah. Like I say, he's taking his opportunities. And you should probably flip it in, like people say, like, yeah, I'm going to be the best cornerback on your roster. Some people could sit and say, you know what, he's got a big set of cojones, but can he back it up? And what we've seen of him, he has done. And like you say, this league can change really quick. People's roster spots aren't as guaranteed as they used to be, so making players get him in.
I suppose we'll close out the defensive discussion by talking about Leighton Vander Esch. We haven't talked much, but again, a solid performance. Maybe not a great amount of flash, but again, finished with the top tackler on the team. For me, it's trending towards extension as opposed to not extending. What do you guys reckon?
I think he's due another contract. I think the way he came on towards the end of last season, he's settled into this Dan Quinn defensive scheme. We haven't really seen a drop off in the games where he's been a non-factor. He's still recording stats. He's still making tackles and what have you. There were games last year where he was zeroing out across the board for certain games. This year, you're at least getting 2, 3, 4, 5 tackles minimum. And I think he's certainly developed a leader on this defense as well. So, but I mean, the performance he did, if you remember, he actually appeared on the injury report on Friday as well, because he'd suffered the illness. Paul and I discussed this on Saturday. Were we concerned? And you're like, well, you'd rather he was ill the beginning of the week, and that way you've got a chance to get your fluids back up, get yourself right, and what have you. But he came into that game 9 solo tackles, 5 or 6 assisted tackles, and 1 tackle for loss as well. I mean, he blew that defensive line up. That offensive line up as well on a lot of those plays, and certainly made saving tackles as well. So,
Jay, what do you reckon on the contract? I know you've not been too hot on Van Der Esch is there another 5-6 million offer on the table in the spring?
So if you'd have asked me this question about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I'd have been like, mate, stop smoking what you're smoking. But I'm starting to warm to him, and yeah, like I say, was Sunday's best game in a Cowboys uniform today. I think was it on the stats? It was 14 tackles, 9 of them were solo. When he's starting to play at this level that you were hoping you were going to get when you drafted him, it makes no sense not to bring him back, especially because he knows this defense. So he can be one of those leaders in the locker room for that aspect. I just hope it's not a flash in the pan, and it's like I say, it's the Leighton Van Der Esch that we were hoping we'd get him when we drafted him so high.
Yeah, as a former first round pick, you do have to remember that, and they do normally hit on first round picks. I think with the time we have left in the show, it's left us a nice little segment for special teams. Not the perfect run of the mill that we're used to. If that fumble happens in the third or fourth quarter, I don't know if the Cowboys coming away with the win. What do we guys think? Were we fortunate that the fumble happened in the first quarter?
I think there's two ways to think about that. I mean, obviously, short created a short field for their offense, allowed them to get into the game. Now, if we hadn't fumbled there, then obviously there's a good chance you would have driven the ball up the field, got another score, and then maybe the Texans fold in that game. Doing it in the third quarter, if again, if you've scored on your first two drives and you're 14-0 up or whatever, and you're putting the Texans in a hole, would the fumble punt in the third quarter mean anything? I don't know. It's a bit of you need a crystal ball almost to see what would happen or what have you.
Yeah.
Jay,
he hasn't been terrible, Turpin. He has done an awful lot for us on special teams. To my knowledge, that is the first fumble. I can't think of another, unless you guys can think of another.
No.
Are we ready to just forget all about the fumble? It happened. It was a scare. Let's move on.
Maybe forget it. It's a bit too strong of a phrase to use for that. I think you could probably use it to an advantage, and obviously, and just show what it can do, and like I said, it can kind of get your backs against the wall and punch you in the deep hole. But like you said, apart from that, it's been pretty much perfect on special teams this year for the Cowboys. It happens to the best of them. Do you know what I mean? Like people like David Hester has made mistakes like that. I'm not saying it's going to turn out to be a Hester kind of player, but if you get where I'm coming from, it's no one's immune to these mistakes. It's just one of the things. It's a lack of concentration. Sadly, on another day, would another team cash in on that? Probably not. It's one of them, innit? Like you say, if it's going to happen, I'm glad it happened when it did. When our backs were really up against it towards that game, because like you say, aside from probably our first drive and pretty much the last drive of the game, that game could have gone anywhere if that would have been later in the game. I think it would have absolutely deflated the whole Cowboys side of AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, I think the one thing to say as well is that I think the whole reason why Turpin sort of fumbled that ball was actually because because Kelvin Joseph was starting on defense, he wasn't the jammer for the gunner on the punt return team as well. So if you actually saw the gunner on that side had actually come down and was actually standing level with Turpin. So yeah, Turpin had sort of signalled a fair catch, but he obviously was aware that there was a guy off to the side there ready to make the tackle if he'd even done anything.
Yeah.
And I think, that split second of taking your eye off the ball, and then you're maybe he was ever so slightly out of position. It probably bounced off his shoulder pads a little bit as well as he was trying to cradle it in as well. And it's little things like that, little changes on just having somebody come in and play a different position and not get the block on the line and, drive the guy outside and what have you. It can be little things like that just, again, it all snowballs. So.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I'm certainly not ready to make any changes on who it is. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen first round picks doing that kind of stuff. I know I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I certainly know Brian is of the same opinion as myself that no way do you want your new shiny first round pick catching kickoffs and punts for him to tear downfield and get battered by guys that are trying to make a roster and prove a point. It just doesn't sit well with me. So I would continue with Turpin. Are you guys of the same opinion that this is a storm in a teacup?
Yeah, do you know what, you can even take it back. I can remember when we first drafted Ted, and they had him out there on returns, and you're like, no. It's like, why? I mean, you bring someone like Des in for a reason, and that's the your offense. You put him on kick, Turpin's got speed to keep him in there. Like I say, that's his role on the team, and that's it. Have we had a dynamic returner like that since?
Well, this is it, Jamie.
Ryan Switch, or could you even go as far back as Harris? Apart from those two, has there anybody that's really made any difference in the return game?
I think the league have made no qualms about it. They're trying to reduce this kind of stuff. They're trying to reduce the injuries on kickoffs and punt returns. That's why it's so enticing to just kick the ball through the uprights on a kickoff and bring the team out to let it go and bring the team out to the 25-yard line. As of, I can't remember exactly when the league came in, but you let the ball go through the end zone, you're a quarter of the way up the field. Yep. So it's too enticing. You're not going to get the Devin Hesters of the world anymore. That for me, that position's gone.
Like I get trying to minimize the injuries and all that kind of thing. But is there anything better in an NFL game than seeing a returner return the ball 99 yards?
Oh, it's incredible.
That's what I mean.
It's so exciting.
So I think you've got to, the league's got to try and find some happy medium, like you say. But you can't take away that side of the game. It's electric.
Okay, I think we've and let's just say it. Brett Maher was pretty. He was automatic. Maher. I think we can start calling him. Let's get our jerseys ordered now. Let's go the whole hog. Still quite incredible. Still quite incredible that we are of this opinion. I'll bring up the point again. The Cowboys didn't have a kicker on the Friday before the season started. Technically, there was no kicker on the roster. Anybody could have phoned Brett Maher on the Friday night and said, "Hi Brett, do you fancy a 2-year contract?" And he could have been off. So that's just the way the kicking game goes. 2 field goals, a long of 53. It's open and shut case, and 3 extra points. he's fantastic, and he's having a fantastic season. And let's face it, he'll probably end up in the Pro Bowl because he's America's team's kicker. You might get the kicker from the Northeast who plays in green, but you never know. He could well be the NFC kicker.
Did we all kind of got a little bit of egg on our faces, and I mean just everybody in the whole of the Cowboys realm, because all the talk coming out of training camp was that he was the best of a bad four. And now it's like he could nail some of these with his eyes closed.
Well, I said was it 2 seasons ago or last season? I said of Brett Maher that he would nail the 50-yarder and miss the extra point, and but he seems to have just cut out. He's cut out all that uncertainty, and he's having a superb season. The Big Lebowski has chimed in. I'm hosting. I'm back. Good to see you.
Is this one of these things now we can put to rest that Lebowski isn't Graham?
Trying to start a fan club. Thank you to everybody who commented tonight. I think we on the hour and a half mark. I think it's time for us to pay the bills. Let's see who wants to entice somebody with booking through Cowboys experience. Jamie, let's hear it.
Well, and yeah, I think everybody knows we've got a great partnership with Cowboys Experience. Sponsors of the podcast. Barry and his crew, really good friends of ours, and the Cowboys fan base around the world. So if you're going to go out and watch the Cowboys play, make sure you check out these guys for meet and greet, stadium tours, tailgate, game tickets, much more. Like royalty. If you've been keeping tabs with Paul, Darren, and Mike Bull while they've been out there, it's absolutely fantastic. Meet players like Drew Pearson, Jay Novacek, DCC. So everybody, just hit them up, and when you do, just make sure that you say that you've come from UK Cowboys, because if you do, what do we get, guys?
You get free stuff. It's literally just free stuff. And of course, we saw that Paul met, was it Sam Williams, and who was the other player?
Tyler Smith was one of them. I think
that's right, Tyler Smith.
I think when Mike was out there this weekend and he was dropping messages, he met Drew Pearson, Jay Novacek, he even wanted to sign Rob Lilly. I can't remember. He won a signed jersey from a Cowboys legend, and yes, so it's amazing.
Yep. And of course, for those who don't know, followers of Paul on Twitter, look out for the special that Paul is coming back with him, because some of you may not know, Paul does have another GoPro. I don't know if he's found his original GoPro or if he's been given another one, but the GoPro will certainly have loads of great footage, so make sure you keep your eyes out for that one.
He was loaned it from Bobby Belt.
He got a loan of it. They are.
Yep.
They are.
So,
Lauren, if you want to talk us through our good friends.
Yeah, so speaking of Bobby Belt, obviously check out these content creators. Not only the Cowboys, we're talking Cowboys, the Cowboys Break, Mix Shots, but you've also got Hanging with the Boys, Blogging the Boys, which obviously hosts Paul and Meg Murray's The World's Team on a Saturday. Some of us occasionally drop by and help out with that as well. You've got Skywalker Steel, you've got Pick Six Sports, you've got KT's Fun Tweets, KT's Fun House, you've Coffee with the Coach, Big Game James, Law Nation. Check these guys out. It helps pass my day when I'm at work. I've constantly got my headphones on and I'm listening to all these guys. So, and it's developing your knowledge as well.
And to close out the show, make sure you keep your eyes on all our social channels on Facebook, on Twitter. Make sure you keep an eye out for the 2023 travel package. This is hot in the works. We have game day tickets, we have tours, meets and greets, and so much more ready for the 2023 season. We can't wait to share it with you. Make sure you join the Facebook group to be first to know all about it. And on that note, I will say goodbye to my 2 wide receivers who have managed to get me through the game. I am still here, thankfully, and I still have a voice. The Big Lebowski was shopping tonight. Don't worry about it. Make sure you join the pre-game show for the Jaguars on Thursday. The show on Thursday, 9 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, and 1 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you join Mike and the team for that. On that note, guys, it's another win, 10-win season, and we're on the brink of the playoffs. Any more to add on tonight's show?
No, I think we got out there with a win. That's the main thing, and onwards and upwards.
It
Jay,
wasn't.
and Dad?
It wasn't pretty. It wasn't nice, but we got a win, and like I say, the playoffs are in touching distance now.
There you are. The guys have summed it up. Make sure you join the team on Thursday, and we will see you next time.